Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Valiuco and welcome to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird and wonderful things that we experience. Today's deluxe episode is with Mortellus. How do I describe Mortellus, aside from just saying that they're amazing? They're a witch, they're a necromancer, a mortician, a medium, an author. They're also a quantum physics nerd, and they also love video games. This episode is only an hour and a half long, and I say only because we ended up talking for 3 hours. I cut the recording in an hour and a half, but every minute of that conversation was a delight. They talked, as I mentioned, about quantum physics. They actually read part of their new book, a passage from the new book, shared with me a map. I encourage you to watch and see the map. They talked a little bit about their first book, Do I Have to Wear Black? And the origin of the title. And it was an amazing conversation. Just a personal aside, after discussing the Morrigan with Mortellus, I ended up playing World of Warcraft with my friend Jacqueline. And we ended up having this amazing interaction with this random person that we met online. Just like really kind, warm, generous. And then I realized what their username was. The Morrigan. So, yeah, that was a fun synchronicity. I don't know a ton about the Morrigan, but I do get the sense that they periodically just tap you on the shoulder. And I'm super into that. Anyway, let's get to the episode. This one was a delight, and I hope you enjoyed as well.
Again. Okay, so again, you have all these life hacks, right? Because as you know, when your brain is different than everyone else's, and you know that, you have to come up with systems so that you can function and kind of pass like a normal. Yes.
I can't see, but I have like my crazy serial killer board of stuff. I can't turn my computer enough to show you all of it.
Of course, I know, but I do that too. I have a whiteboard where I list everything. I am a compulsive list writer, just like every single thing. And then something a friend of mine told me was to break down everything into its component parts, because I'll do something like go to the post office and then clean the house. And it's like, or maybe just break that down to like washing the floors and doing the dishes and things like that.
You should see oh my God, I'm about to embarrass myself. Everyone's going to die.
Cut it if you want.
I'm going to share. So this is my fantastic house. But look over here at Christmas Day, where I was from 4 a.m. onward, literally every activity I was doing all day.
I love it so much. I saw mimosas on there real quick too, and that's my favorite thing.
Oh my God. I know it's too much.
But it helps keep you on track, because when you have a brain that's constantly chasing dopamine, it's really easy to say, oh, this is fun. I'm just gonna that's shiny. I'm gonna go do the shiny thing, because then I'm gonna get my little fix, and then I'll be able to function throughout my day. So yes.
Yeah, I feel that. This morning I got up, I went to the kitchen to make my morning tea.
Mm-hmm.
My tea is going, and I think, well, while that's happening, I'm gonna get breakfast. But actually I cleaned out the refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
Had my tea an hour later.
That's real though. That's a real thing. I was talking with Jason and Mira, and we were talking about ADHD, and Jason was like, well, no, but can't you have a lot of ideas and be really creative? And I was like, no, this is ADHD. ADHD is walking to the post office because you have to drop off a package, and then remembering that there's an Ace Hardware down the street, and deciding to get sandpaper because there was this selenite knife that you really wanted to carve. Right. And you needed metal sandpaper to do it.
But while you're there, you also realize that you had this project in your shed, and you probably get this thing and this thing, and what it would save a lot of time if you go ahead and get batteries as well, because you have to change them in the
because you're there.
Exactly.
It keeps going. Exactly. It's just bam, 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 bam. And eventually you have the tea like a couple hours later, but you don't have it right away.
Like, I'm writing 6 books at one time right now because I cannot stay like
Yeah, of course.
the worst. It's the worst.
This sounds perfectly normal to me though. Where I'm sewing, I have a crochet project, I have, I'm recording a podcast. I need it all so I can bounce,
Like, shout out to my editor at Llewellyn, because I am convinced that they at all times like hate me.
Oh.
Because I'm constantly messaging like, I'm so sorry that I am behind on this thing that I arbitrarily decided I was behind on. And they're like, do you know how much harder you work than we think it like everybody does?
Of
They're very,
course.
which is
That's really good. Yes. Because you probably got this too. Like growing up, I always felt like I was behind, or I missed some kind of, I missed like the like how to do normal things, like again, keep a calendar and keep deadlines. And then I realized when I got into the real world, like, oh, all of that's arbitrary anyway. Like, again, I'm putting extra pressure on myself. Nobody else is putting themselves to this standard, or very few people are holding themselves to this. Like, I have to do this and get this done. Like, no, everybody's late with everything.
I always wind up in this awkward moment when it's like this childhood thing, because I grew up really strange. I grew up with abusive parents.
Yeah.
And I grew up in an evangelical quiverful cult. So that's a whole level that is like, so our experiences are not really compatible, but
no. I mean, I'm familiar with the whole quiverful movement, because that I've had to explain that to multiple people because they've never heard of it before. I heard it on some recovering, like an atheist podcast, and it was someone who was ex-quiverful, and she was talking about her experience in that. And ever since, I'm like, this is a thing. People need to know that this is out there and this is happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in a house where like it's long skirts and your hair is covered up all the time, and no TV, no radio, no books, no anything. Girls received no education whatsoever. You just, your job was to cook and make babies or whatever. Yeah, it's hard to explain that to people because they don't know where I'm coming from, and it's like, no, I was literally sold to someone for cash when I was 13 to be their wife. Like, that person was 67 years old, and I know how much I cost. Like, that's a thing that has to live in your head forever.
Of course. Yeah. People just assume this idea of bride prices are other cultures, other times, and not literally happening right now to people who are your contemporaries.
Right.
Yeah.
I fetched the fine high price of $250.
Oh my God.
And I have to laugh about it, or it's like horrible, right?
Of course. Yes.
And after 6 months of that nightmare, I ran away. And they gave him a refund. He got a refund. Which is like, it's levels. I'm like, I got returned at Walmart. Like old milk.
Yeah, right?
The laughing is so I don't die inside about it. That's
oh my God, of course. Because that's the only way, when you've been through major trauma, and major trauma that other people don't understand, you have to develop a sense of humor about it, because otherwise it's so alienating.
Or you can't survive, right? Like,
you can't. Exactly. I feel like that's a way of reclaiming, right? Like, I'm going to laugh about this. This is my story, not just a thing that happened to me.
Or you wind up in a room where everyone's like, this Christmas childhood memory, and it comes around to your turn naturally, and you're like, well, one year, Dad put on pants that day, and just like, you've got nothing. Or like, you say something naturally about your life and you think it's totally a normal thing. Here I am at 40 still doing this. I'll be 40.
Yes.
You say something totally normal, and then everyone around you, their face sort of freezes up, and someone like quietly goes, I'm so sorry, and you're like, oh no.
Right?
What is this video even going to be about today? Listen to us.
But I love this, because to me, like again, I'm interested in and I've always been interested in kind of the anthropological, you know, and also just like the individual, like what is your story? How do you get through life? How do you survive? Because all of us have these stories and these experiences, and you have to talk about them, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I maybe because of my trauma background, I have zero problem talking about like what a friend of mine once said this to me. She's like, you know, and we were in this group. She's like, you know, Vanessa's one of those people. You can say the weirdest, the most off the wall things, and she'll just say like, oh, I see, I understand, of course.
Yeah, and I think too, there's this whole like, I don't know what it is about people, particularly, and maybe I'm just saying words that are probably wrong and false, but particularly people assigned female at birth, like you just become an expert at everything, you know all the stuff because you never ever want to need anyone for anything else ever. Like
Absolutely, yes.
like everyone in your life relies on you, you're the person, right? That's
Oh, you just hit me
I know,
right. Yeah, exactly.
soft spot, right?
That's
we get
it.
really we get really bad at being vulnerable because those walls are so thick and so high, and you wind up in these circumstances where nobody really knows who you are. And then there are these moments, right, like we're having right now, where you immediately recognize someone else as this sort of kindred spirit, like you understand each other. It's like you
That's
speak
it.
a different language.
It's exactly that. I feel like I know within 5 minutes of talking to somebody, like, oh, I can talk to you about this. Like, we might not have the same experience. I mean, clearly we don't have the same experiences, but there is a certain threshold for trauma and a certain like approach to it, right? The humor about it, the having processed it, the having gone through it. So you're not inflicting your trauma stories on people. You're just telling people your stories, and like hopefully kind of broadening their experiences too, while also allowing yourself like little bits of vulnerability, because it's also hard with trauma. You're
Right.
like, are you safe? I don't know. Okay. Yeah.
Like, so we talked at Paracon. That was super fun. I was so glad to be there. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's a difference to now, right? Because what I showed up looking like a corporate bad guy who probably knows kung fu or something, just like a
Exactly.
little guarded.
Of course.
This is different.
Yeah.
But slight pin in that. There's been a bird in my office all morning that just left, so I'm going to shut the door.
Oh, of course. You go right ahead.
Your viewers can have that little slice of life.
Amazing. Perfect. That's what this is about.
No, it is weird though, finding those bits of vulnerability. It's like you either guard those things like precious secrets, like little hand grenades that can blow up the day you're having, or
Yes.
you roll them out like you're on a corner with a coat full of Rolexes. Like, look at what I got.
I know.
Which terrible experience am I gonna vomit at you today?
I got trauma in all shapes and sizes, baby. What do you need?
Anyone who's ever played Resident Evil will remember that one weird guy, like, hey, stranger.
That's hard too, because I feel like there is this like when you've got like it just my experience, like going through trauma and feeling like the weird person, right? The outsider. I think that's why, to me, like growing up, like Lilith was this figure that I was really drawn to, because the outside, right? I always feel like I'm kind of outside peeking in, and I'm also kind of hiding the vulnerable bits, or the kind of the most important parts, because I'm like, are you safe? Are you safe? Okay. All right, here's the weird stuff. Do you like my weird little trinkets? Because that's my soul.
This is my soul.
Exactly.
I don't know, it's weird too. And like, I'll totally put you on the spot. Have you read this?
Not yet. I ordered it for myself and for my friend Steph. That was a Christmas gift to me and to her. So yes.
Well, you'll discover right away that I put some pretty vulnerable stuff in the chapter about the underworld, and I adore that chapter. It means more to me than most things I've ever written. So
Yes.
know that going in. But
Perfect. Will do.
you know, I'm sitting there writing this chapter that should really just be a boring essay about places you go when you die. And it's like, and you get that like tappity tap 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 from like, is it deities? is it a sad, tinier version of you who wants to be heard today? And it's like, you're going to say a thing you've never told people before right here. Just put it out there.
Yes.
And you do it. And then you get to spend, like I did, almost a year just sort of waiting for it to be on a shelf.
Of course.
And it's funny the responses I got to it. It's not funny. Funny's the wrong word, right? Like, spoilers for your audience who haven't read it, but I talk about being sexually assaulted when I was 5 years old. And as 5-year-olds do, I was a weird 5-year-old, I attempted suicide.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because here I was at church on Sunday morning, and that's the topic they're talking about that day, is if you kill yourself, you don't get to go to heaven, you don't get to see your family. And I thought, that sounds fucking great. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Hell? Cool.
Oh my God. Right.
Look at the awful shit we're laughing about on this episode of whatever. You'll never air this. This will be the worst. But I thought to myself, kid brains, I thought, the devil sounds like a really cool person. Like, maybe he'd like hide you there so that like God's people can't find you. And
right.
That was my thought process. And I went home and ate my father's heart pills because I'd been told they were not candy and they would kill you. And that's what I did.
Wow.
In reality, I wound up in a coma for 4 days.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I died. They tried to resuscitate me, failed, declared me dead, and 8 minutes later, I spontaneously woke up. What? For me, that experience was like years.
Yes.
I remember being a place. I remember talking to people and going places and doing things. I had experiences. I have memories from there. And maybe it was coma-addled 5-year-old brain. I accept that.
Sure.
But also, I lived in a house with no books and no radio and no TV, and I met a deity who told me their name.
Wow. Yeah.
And I got to carry that into my adulthood, and after I ran away from home, find her in a book one day. And that is like my tent revival story.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
So that's really important to me. And talking about that was really vulnerable, obviously.
Of course.
And then I got emails from people who were either wildly vacillating between, here's what that meant to me that you shared it, or bad things didn't happen badly enough at you because you suck. Just, oh no. I've gotten some really terrible emails from people, but
oh my God. Whew.
it was all very heavy.
Oh, sorry, you cut out for a second. I missed that last.
I was just saying that got very heavy. Just make weird sounds at it.
Yeah. Oh, I love this because your trauma response is the same as mine, and that's like, you cannot
Thumb your nose at it.
Yeah. I love it because you can't talk to normal people about this in the way that you and I are talking about this, because they're just like, are you sure you're okay? You're like, no, I mean, I'm as fine as I can be, considering what I've been through, but yes.
I'm aware that you have people who will hear this and watch this, and sort of, I feel like they're over there with like a notepad and pen like this. It's just like scientists trying to figure out what the hell we're doing.
Absolutely. Oh, the first thing I'm going to do is send this to my friend Steph, because she's a therapist and she'll love it. I got her your book, so it'll be great.
Hello, Steph. No, I'm not okay. That'll be the title of my memoir. Oh God.
There's so much I want to say. One, I think first of all, I get so mad. I don't know if it's the Aquarius in me or the trauma survivor in me, but when people are vulnerable and then somebody is mean to them, especially since I've decided we're friends, and I'm like, I can't believe somebody hurt you, I'm gonna kill him, like that immediate like protection, like, no, you don't get to hurt them, no, you stay away. What possesses somebody to do that when you're sharing like the most vulnerable thing, something, again, like you said, you've never told anyone, you're putting it in your book, right, and then out into the world.
Yeah, it's like I will there ADHD at it. That's hard to say. Can we just like come up with a new word for that?
I think we should, yes.
Words. I'll do that sort of brain at it, and we can come all the way back around to the other side about like you were talking about Lilith, and it's like I think all of those experiences, I know that people will say all day long, and they definitely said it to me very loudly on the internet, that the Morrigan is not a maternal figure. Sure, but also maybe that says more about how we view women and mothers and what they're allowed to be.
Yes.
Hot take. I know that people will be mad about that when they hear it. Sure, the Morrigan's not a mother. That's not in their purviews, but they were a mother to me.
Right.
The kind that I needed.
Yes.
One that said, get your ass back up. You don't get to be dead.
Yes. Right.
Get up off the goddamn floor. That's not for you. You have stuff to do, and it will be hard and it will suck, and you're going to go do it anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
And here I am typing this chapter, trying to define what the underworld is to me in words, and thinking about these experiences and what it was like to be there. And now your debt's due. Now it's time.
That's it. Exactly.
Now it's time.
Yes. Yeah. And that sense of, I've prepared you for this.
Yeah.
It's time. Yeah.
I think too, there's this, I don't know, this is just a random thought, but
yeah.
You see memes sometime on the internet that talk about the difference between nice and kind. Kindness isn't always nice.
Yes.
We expect mothers to be nice. The Morrigan showed me kindness. Kindness was what I needed. Never been kind. Or she's never been nice.
Yes, exactly.
But she gave me a kindness. She gave me my life.
Yes.
Gave me time to live and learn and grow in the realms of the dead.
Yes.
Only to send me back 8 minutes later feeling like a tiny grown-up in this body that was still battered and bruised, and waking up with this fucking bald ass doctor standing over me with their belt out saying, if you ever do something like that again, I'll personally beat your ass or whatever. And talk about cognitive dissonance.
Of course.
How are you laying in a hospital bed at that age, having that experience, and no one noticed that something terrible happened to you?
Right.
And just to wake up there, and I remember just breaking out in laughter. And here's my extraordinarily angry father.
Sure.
And here's his friend doctor, who's, they already have their belt out. I live in the South. This is what's happening. And I'm just laughing like a crazy person because I realized that just none of this mattered.
Yeah.
Be as cruel and as stupid as you want, and I will live and grow and thrive and survive. I will be something you never ever wanted me to be.
Yes.
I will win at the end of the day, and I will win by living.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. Because you were shown something real when you have a real experience like that, and for you at such a young age.
So little.
It's so tiny, and to have that experience and to have that perspective, it is laughable when people try to come at you with these things that you know, and not just intellectually, in your bones, in every cell of your being. This doesn't matter. This is pointless. You have put value in this. I know that's laughable, and I am laughing at you because I can't take this seriously because I've seen something that is actually real.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just this sort of feeling of living every day, sort of, I don't know, don't get me wrong, I'm afraid of a lot of things, and mostly for my children and my spouse, but
Yeah.
live life sort of fearlessly because you know what comes next for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And sort of that feeling of, there's a movie I'm fond of, Big Fish. Have you ever seen it?
Haven't, no.
Definitely go watch it. But
Okay.
it's sort of like living every day saying, this isn't how I die, which is relevant to this film.
Of course. Yes.
And I don't know, it's very empowering in a way.
Yeah.
And everyone listening can stuff that like instantaneous thought of, look how strong that made you. Because that makes you want to kill people.
Oh my God, same. Thank you. Oh my God, same. Yes.
I made me strong. I survived in spite of all of that jackassery. But
Yeah, right. Thank you. Yes. I have experienced a lot of grief and loss in the past 4 years. And the number of people who, oh, well, you'll be okay. You'll be stronger at the other end of it. Like, no, I might not. Like, I'm doing all right now, but there were about 4 years where I really wasn't attached to this world or this life or any of that. Just wasn't, and couldn't share that with people because immediately like, oh no, you don't mean that, do you? It's like, all right, cool. Well, I guess I can't talk to you anymore. Great.
yeah, I hate that sort of idea that, oh my God, what is this episode going to be about? Like, there's no punchline here.
I know, I love it though.
I hope for your viewers and listeners, I'm doing the right amount of gesticulating for a trauma person. I talk with my hands. That's on the pile, right? Just
Totally. Yes. Yes, I understand.
crazy. I sort of hate that idea that you have to be like, you have to be healed and everything has to be perfect. And I think that's a problem we have in the occult community as well, where it's like, if you have magic and you're a witch and you're this, that, and the other thing, like everything should be perfect. You have money and you're healthy and you're not depressed and whatever. But, you know, shit's fucked.
It's totally. Yes.
Magic serves purposes outside the self.
Yes.
For your listeners who don't know much about me, and maybe for yourself, I don't know. I never, ever do magic for myself, ever.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ever. I do not do any magic for myself. Part of an oath that I swore to a deity who let me be alive. Like that.
Fair. Yeah.
Plenty. And I have found that magic I do for others is more impactful. And I think there's a message in that.
Absolutely.
Maybe we don't have to be fixed. It's okay to be broken.
Yes.
But if we can make the world a little better for any other person, that's worth it.
Yes. Yes. I love that because again, I'm a chaos magician. I do all sorts of different kinds of magic, but just my life philosophy and political philosophy is very much rooted in this idea of, if you can make someone's life, you have a choice. Every interaction, every time you see another person, you can make their lives easier. You can make their lives harder. Make their lives easier, because you're bringing that into the world, right? That joy, that relief. Like you said, shit's fucked. Things are really rough right now, and rough for a lot, even rougher for a lot of people. So be kind, be gentle, walk in the world. Again, to me, that's like subtle forms of magic and energy manipulation, just introducing kindness into every interaction that you have. It doesn't take work, and it brings joy.
And there's going to be someone out there who's going to tell you you're fake, or you're building artificial moral high ground for yourself. Someone said that to me recently.
I'm gonna like punch so many people on your back.
Just be kind and don't give a shit what anybody says about it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But also, I think, I don't know, I'm probably like giving bad advice and stuff, but like, magic is magic, and lighting a candle is great, but you know, having a conversation with someone, writing a card, mailing someone a box of cookies, mundane acts have so much power, and we forget about them. And
absolutely, yes.
I think you could ask most people out there and they would tell you that's kind of my MO. I sit and talk to people all hours of the night. I take messages from strangers about people in their lives who are dying, or I don't know, I just try and be there for people in a human kind of way, because it's all we've got left. Is our humanity.
Yes. And it's for me, that is the greatest form of magic that we have. It is that humanity. It's that emotional connection. Again, it's that being present for people, being joyful, being and again, being present for people in their sadness and in their trauma, and not trying to fix and not trying to repair, because I've lost several people, important people. I lost 3 very important people to me in about a year and a half, and became kind of this grief expert in a way. And so as soon as I know that someone has lost somebody, I immediately reach out to them, assure them that whatever way they want to grieve is a totally normal way of grieving, that nobody gets to tell them what their grief is like. And then I also tell them that they're going to hear a lot of really stupid things that people are going to say to try to make it better. Nothing is going to make it better. And they get to just be as sad as they want for as long as they want, because that's reality.
Yeah. If I'm stepping into the role right now of like death care worker, and we're talking about grief and stuff, there would be one thing I would want people listening to take away. Remember that the 5 stages of grief have long since been disproven. Like they don't work.
Right.
Here's why. The 5 stages of grief by Kubler-Ross were part of a study that surrounded people who were dying of terminal illnesses in a particular hospital in a particular town. They were all similar class backgrounds, religious backgrounds, racial backgrounds, etc. It's a very narrow sort of thing. Kubler-Ross noticed that their family exhibited similar emotional responses to the person dying. And that's where we get those 5 stages from. But what it does is give people a misperception that death is orderly, and it gives you the possibility of feeling like you have grieved wrongly, you have done something incorrect. Amusingly, if you were to ask, and this is a fact, it's an actual fact, the 5 stages of grief are the most commonly known psychological theory or construct anywhere of anyone in the world. Any person could name that for you when they couldn't name things like confirmation bias. Like they will know that one, even though it's false.
Yes.
My preferred method of grief or grieving theory
Mm-hmm.
is the Tonkin model. If you're unfamiliar with it,
Mm-mm.
the Tonkin model says that your life is like, it's like a pint jar. And when grief happens or trauma happens or whatever thing happens, imagine filling it up with, ink. Grief fills you up, takes up every space, everywhere. It swallows your life. And we need to understand that we can't make grief go away, and we cannot fix grief, and we cannot make grief smaller. Grief demonstrably does not change ever throughout your life. You always grieve and experience the same at any moment. But what does happen is that with experiences, your jar gets a little bigger. And while that amount of grief might remain the same, hopefully your life grows around it so that you have room for happiness again. You have room for more experiences. So whatever anyone listening might be grieving, I hope that your life grows around it. I hope that you find space for happiness alongside the darkness. But make peace with it, because it will always be there.
That's it. I love that so much. And because that's been my experience. And people expect, again, this like linear, orderly grieving and also an end date. And that is not how that works.
Yeah, it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not. This doesn't work.
Exactly. You don't run the steps and then you're okay. Like it is, I can be at Trader Joe's and then suddenly miss my aunt because I see a product that she used to buy and be near tears. She passed, what, 3 years ago? It doesn't end, right? And again, I think it's so important for people to know, circling back to this idea of healing. I always think about how I read that, like, when I was growing up, I always thought scurvy was just a thing from vitamin deficiency. You suddenly develop sores, but it's that the lack of vitamin C causes old wounds to open up. So there's, like, even physiologically, nothing is ever really healed. It's just kind of stitched together and requires constant energy to stay stitched together. Go ahead.
Sort of nightmarish, because old broken bones can fall apart. Imagine you've had a C-section and your insides fall out. Like,
right, exactly.
I'll give you a fun little detail.
Yeah.
So I ran away from home at 17.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of my origin story. And since I had no proof that I existed, I had no birth certificate, social security card, ID. I didn't exist on paper. And it's actually very complicated to establish an identity when that is the facts of the situation.
Right.
So there was one job readily available to me. I joined a carnival. And I spent a decade with a carnival.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
While, like, still living my life.
Yes.
And actually, earlier today, I got distracted cleaning out the book, and I found this. I forgot I still even had it. Oh my gosh. Here's my folder. But not only, this was my last year's, I am a card carrying carnival. I still have my ID.
Oh my God, amazing. Amazing.
Right? My life is weird.
I love it though.
Carnivals are one of the places that scurvy is still rampant today, actually,
Really?
because much like, think turn of the century, like company stores and stuff, people that work carnivals often don't have transportation. They travel with the carnival. They eat at the stands at the carnival, and it comes out of their paychecks. So they often don't have money at the end of the week, and they never have fresh food.
Oh no! Oh my God!
Yeah. For a while, I organized an effort to like bring donated clothes and supplies and fruit and stuff,
yes,
to carnival stops. Because of my experiences there, that was something I started doing. But
absolutely, good for you. That's amazing.
One of the few places that scurvy is still rampant. Not just pirates, it's
carnies too. Oh my God. And again, I would have no idea. I feel like the majority of people have no idea that there are just, again, people are living these lives that we think are from some other time. It's like, no, it's literally happening right now. Right now.
Unless you've been on, like, the receipt prison tattoo in the back of a carnival, like 18-wheeler truck, you've not lived. That's like, did I do that? Cannot confirm or deny. But I will tell you, I am a bang up face painter.
I can imagine.
I've done face painting for like 20 years.
I love it. That's amazing. That's great. That's good, like, creative, artistic, ritual work, right?
I love it. I really do. It's fun. It's not something I've done in a couple of years because of the pandemic, but
of course, yeah.
That's one of my, like, on the side things I like doing that I don't think people would guess about me, really. But
of course, yeah. But again, bringing joy to the world, like bringing beauty into the world. Like, I mean, even as I'm 38 and I'm still like, oh yeah, I'd like to get my face painted. Like, that sounds like fun.
Funny, this happened like 2 years ago, but I was face painting at a local, like, street festival, and a woman came up to me with their kids, wanted me to face paint their kids. It's all very ordinary. And partway through, they told me that when they were little, and it would have been the year that I first started face painting, that I painted their face, and that their words, that they were just sort of a fat, ugly kid, and they felt bad about themselves, and that I told them they were beautiful. And she said it really stuck with her whole life, that she would think back to that moment and that it was really powerful for her. And she just wanted me to know that she turned out happy, and that I carry that around.
Oh my God. Yes. I'm gonna cry. That's so
that
beautiful.
was enough for me. Like
That's it.
Getting
Yes.
and come full circle and paint their kids and be there. And it's interesting how those kinds of, we don't think about the face painter at the carnival, but
Right.
they get to be there through people's lives, and those kinds of things are so powerful.
Absolutely. Yes. One of my favorite authors is Alice Miller, she's a German psychoanalyst. And again, all of her work is about, again, if you're going through trauma, and to have these witnesses, right? Helping witnesses, enlightened witnesses, and to just have, again, we don't realize how much these interventions, especially with kids, matter so much, and that you just need a little nugget, and that can get you through, and that can change the course of your life. So again, more of an emphasis on just be kind, right? And be authentic. Again, it's not being nice, right? I love this definition, because to me, nice is always fake and kindness is always real. Nice is this surface thing that people do. Kindness is meaningful. And like you said, sometimes it's a little rough, but it's the right thing to do. It's the kind thing. It's the thing that is good for that person and not good for your own ego and image formation. To just show that kindness to this girl, like she knew, right? Like carried that with the rest of their lives. Like,
and,
I don't know. Yeah.
And for me, and this is the thing, right? And I hope your listeners will take this away. I don't remember meeting that little girl at all. I don't remember saying it.
Yeah.
She did.
Yes.
You don't know what passing moment for you is so powerful for someone else. I have this little, it's not a game really, but it's like a thing I do. Anytime I'm out of my house, which these days is not often, but I make it a goal to say one nice thing to a stranger. It doesn't matter who or what, but just, oh, your hair's pretty, I like your shirt, whatever.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it might mean.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
Make that your goal. Take it away and say one nice thing to a stranger.
I think that's beautiful. And again, this is something that I do. I've shouted across the street at people when they were wearing cool things. Over this busy street in Chicago, I saw this person with the gold lame pants. I was like, amazing pants over the cars.
But isn't this, I'm going to say something that I think might be super vulnerable in a way that you might not expect. So prepare.
I feel myself.
I think when you have those kinds of trauma backgrounds that we both know that we have, you spend a lot of time feeling othered, and you spend a lot of time feeling alone, even when you aren't. And you spend a lot of time feeling like you have no family. But because of that, anyone can be family. You have this hope inside that every single person you meet might be your people, and you need them to know that. And I think that's why for people like yourself, there's this comfort with yelling across the street about pants, because that person might be your people. That's
it. Right. And they might just be my person for that one moment, but at least they know too, like, oh, I'm seen, I'm appreciated. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, obviously you have a trauma background, you could probably read all mine, that idea of, because with my family, like it's not a great situation, but I've had these amazing friends over the years. And so I know I can pluck people, and they find me, I find them, we find each other, and that resonant connection and that meaningfulness. And again, if I talk about vulnerable things, or when I talk about random things, people feel less alone. Great. If anytime I talk about grief, somebody ends up reaching out to me and thanks me for saying that I thought I was crazy, I don't feel alone in this. That I think is really powerful, because trauma can be so alienating and isolating. Yeah. And
we're strangers, essentially.
Yeah.
That sort of passing in the night. We're ships passing on Twitter.
Yeah.
And what awful place that is. The waters are filled with sea monsters. Terrible. stuff. But we're having this experience and we're sharing in ways that are real that we probably don't get to have every day. And not everyone wants to hear this stuff and have these exchanges. So I will say that, I'll be family. I'll be a friend. If you need that, I'm here for that.
Well, thank you. Same to you. Obviously, I've already threatened your enemies, which is how I show I care, people.
Put my foot right up their ass.
Right up. Exactly. Yes.
I was talking the other day to one of my coven students. We were talking about ideal forms. Do you know much about that idea? Sort of a Jungian concept.
Okay.
To put it into basic terms, if you destroyed every chair in the world, destroyed them all, you couldn't destroy the idea of a chair. Everyone would remember it. Right. And they could create it because they remembered it. There is an ideal form of a chair. And we were talking about whether deities are ideal forms, if they're a form of a thought.
Yes.
Interesting stuff, right?
Yes.
For example, is the Morrigan, are they, and I love they for the Morrigan because it is a group of individuals.
Yes, it is.
They are a collective.
Yes.
Are they an ideal form of all we have in us that can fight? Our strength, our ability to be diplomatic and stand sovereign for ourselves. Like, what is that shape? And I was joking that the ideal form of the Morrigan is a pair of like shit-kicking Doc Martens, because that's the shape that it takes in my head.
I love it. Yes.
None of these things make sense, listeners. I hope you're keeping notes. We're going into
I don't know. I think a pair of like good stomping boots makes perfect sense to me. But again, like you talking about the Morrigan and that idea of kindness, like my goddess is Kali, right? And she's all about, I mean, I've got at least, I don't know, 11. I could probably point all the ones just behind me. Again, her whole thing is, what is the best karmic outcome for you? She wants you to have your best karmic outcome. So you could go through something that is terrible, but it's better. Again, it's describe it to people where it's like good karma done quick, survival not guaranteed. But then like one of the it's like a grace and mercy in her wild hair. That's one of the poems to Kali Ma. And then my favorite part, Kali the mother, it's who dares misery love and hug the form of death, dance and destruction's dance, to him the mother comes, right? You have to be willing to, like, again, dance and destruction dance. She dances as she destroys as she dances, but she's the mother, right? Like that to me is very, I don't know, I'm comforted by that.
I have a soft spot for Kali. I have a soft spot for most of those tougher deities, but
yes.
One of my favorite lines of text associated with the Morrigan, which I will admit immediately for your listeners is a poor translation, actually.
Okay.
I like the poor translation, so we'll stick with it.
Yeah.
It is at the guarding of thy death that I am and will be. People that think of the Morrigan as a battle deity alone, a fighter, a warrior, someone who kills, I think they're getting that deity wrong, because sometimes losing is the right answer. Sometimes dying is a kind of grace. Sometimes there's kindness to be had in being on the wrong side of a battle. If you think about the story where the Morrigan causes the warrior's death. We all know that story, and we're all going to collectively not try and pronounce their name.
I think that's wise.
Think about this deity. They are a demigod in a sense. They can't die. They cannot. Their destiny is to just fight and fight and fight. And don't we all sometimes feel like that's our destiny? To never get to stop fighting. And how exhausting that is. So what does the Morrigan do? She She offers him power in exchange for promises. He makes 2 promises over the course of his story. Both sort of chaotic. One is, I will never eat the flesh of a dog. Not a hard promise to make.
Right?
Puppies, cool. I get superpowers for that. Neat. But also to never refuse a request from an elder woman. By the end of the story, in the form of an elderly woman, she offers him this food. He cannot win, but it allows him to die. He gets to be weak. He gets to be human. He gets to be defeated. And that's kind. It is not nice.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
I see people, I saw once, I was at like a pagan pride day years ago, and there was a public altar to the Morrigan set up, and someone had put up like a cereal bowl full of live ammunition on it. There were just bullets in it. And I was so furious. Just like, you have failed at existing. Who did it? You're just gonna, first of all, this is eye level with children. Who did it? But
oh my Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time we stopped just taking surface level impressions of deities. And particularly just talking about the Morrigans as a tripart deity. I mean, throughout their myth, there's as many as 5, I think, figures that were part of that trio. So we have this sort of concept of the Morrigan as an entity being a revolving door of figures. Why is it that as members of the community, of the occult community, the pagan community, that we look at a myth as the end of a story? We're not willing to add to that story. We're scared to death of UPG, unverified personal notices. I talk about that a lot in my writings. You'll always see me go, this is my thing that I thought up and it's not real. That's important, and that is ethically sound. We should do that.
Yes.
But here's my thought. Who's to say that a myth ends when it ends? What it ended when Catholics started killing people? Did the Morrigans stop being more figures? Did there stop being more of them? My thought is that we are the Morrigan. Any of us could be the Morrigan if we embody those values. We just have to fight. We have to be willing to make difficult choices, to be kind even when it isn't nice.
Yes.
To support and protect even if it isn't a comfort.
Yes.
To do what's right even when it's hard. But
yeah, this is hitting all the deity buttons in me, because that is Kali as well. Just this idea of, again, my belief system is kind of the syncretic, like, just mess, because I'm a chaos magician, so I just take things. But I've always admired Gnosticism because of this idea that, Jesus wasn't the only Son of God. Jesus just showed us how we can be as well, that all of us can embody God through work and through study, right? You just do the work, and then anybody can receive revelation. The only a few Gnostic Gospels survive now, but there were hundreds around the time of Christ, because the Gnostics believed that if you just put in the work, you could receive direct revelation from God. So there was this idea of this living myth, right? Living godliness. And I think you bring up this good point that we've kind of, it's like, okay, this is stuff that happened in the past. Like, okay, but if we believe that these energies, these entities, however you want to describe it, are still living and thriving and existing with us, why wouldn't those myths evolve and change? Why wouldn't we be getting, as when we're working with deities, why wouldn't we be getting messages as well to lead kind of the direction of the new myth making, right? That it's not just in the past.
And I think too that, I don't know, like I'm making people mad on your I'm gonna say stuff. I'm gonna get hate mail after this.
You better not. Again, I will get some. I got some
I'll
chick
send it all.
kicking boots. I will.
It's like, as members of this community, and pagan's not a good word because it doesn't work for everyone, and it's a pejorative. Let's just accept that. Occult doesn't work. We're not all occultists, but whatever we all are, let's make the shape of a word in our head.
Yes.
Are we collectors of ancient knowledge, or are we living an experience with our deity? Are we part of a living, breathing, functioning experience? Are we adding to those experiences, or are we just collecting old things, propping them up in our mind like bookshelves? Like, that feels weird to me.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like my experience with Kali is going to be different, again, because I'm a white woman living in the Midwest, than any other practitioner. But there is this energy that I feel from her. And again, I'm just looking at my altar right now. It's Lilith, Isis, and Kali. And they have been with me since high school. And there are specific energies that I feel, like my opinion of what deities are kind of changes with the day, because I'm willing to be flexible with all of this. But there is certain specific energy that I feel like each of them kind of taps me into, and can tap anyone into. Other people's experiences, I think, are going to be different. Again, the ADHD in me is like, yes, collect shiny things. And also, that's not enough for my dopamine. I want to have the experience. I want to leave offerings. There is an energy exchange there. Again, it is a living process, not just inert rocks in a box, and this is somebody who collects crystals. So I'm not knocking that.
You have to be willing to say, just because this deity behaved in a certain way towards me, or did a certain thing, or was associated with a certain thing, well, it can't possibly be them because they don't have anything to do with apples or whatever the fucking thing is.
Yes.
Because it assumes that they are, in essence, dead, that they are unchanging. We are not like that as humans. Why do we put that on deities?
Yes.
You behave differently to different people throughout your life. Like, you're going to act differently toward this 5-year-old child as you would towards them if they were 20, for example. As we grow and change in our experiences as practitioners, or in our relationship with the deity, of course, that relationship is going to evolve and change. It doesn't mean I have to get up one day and decide, actually, I think I've been talking to the Archangel Michael the whole time. Mike also has a spear. We're going to call him Mike now.
I love calling him Mike. I'm into this.
But like, I've seen people do this, right? I know you have. Yes. Where it's like, well, the vibe I'm getting feels different, so I think maybe it's not them. And I think that leaves out a lot of sort of opportunity for experience.
Yes, absolutely. I love this because, again, my kind of sensibility, I'm more like, when I try to get into the science of it, again, which is always a little dicey, but the belief that, we are these 3-dimensional creatures living in a multi-dimensional reality. So if we perceive of deities as existing in multiple dimensions, and we are kind of these 3-dimensional conduits of energy, as we shift, we might, or as they shift, we might get access to different energies, because we're only ever getting cross sections of what these multi-dimensional entities are. So if you feel an energy shift, maybe they just turned, or maybe something in you has shifted and there is a new energy to deal with. Like, maybe it's meeting you where you are right now, or you're meeting it where it is right now. It's not wrong. It's not like you have to put it in a new box,
It's like my ADHD brain is desperately trying to go 2 directions. It's trying to decide, do I say some more words about like the evolution of myth, because that's something that's really powerful to me right now, or do I go on a ramble about like the cosmology of other, because that's also a whole thing. Choose your own adventure.
Oh my gosh, let's start with the cosmology of other. Yes.
So the book I'm writing right now, finished.
Yes.
I did the second round of edits. It's called The Bones Fall in a Spiral, A Guide to Necromancy and the Magic of Death. And I wrote all the things that would possibly make my publisher as uncomfortable as possible.
Yes.
It does not feel like what people stereotypically believe a Llewellyn book is. Rethink Llewellyn, they're doing cool stuff.
Nice.
They're letting me do wild stuff, so
that's great. I love it.
But I talk a lot about, you can't just talk about a thing, right? You have to let's define a soul first, because we have to
of course.
and we also can't talk about necromancy yet because we don't know where things are. We need a map now, because it's
of course.
I wound up sort of trying to create a map based on my experiences when I died.
Yes.
Of sort of these other realms. And that sort of comes back around to what you were saying about sort of feeling where deities are right now, but how they're coming at you. And we talk about the veil. What does that mean?
Right.
Not a down comforter. It's very thin. It's always thin.
Yeah.
It's not just thin on Halloween. It is a veil.
Thank you. Yes.
The weighted blanket.
The down comforter.
The veil between worlds is not indeed the parka between worlds. It's jackass, but
I love it. Gore-Tex between worlds.
So we talk about the veil like it means something, but nobody really defines that or puts context to it.
Yes.
And we talk about the astral plane. But I think we use both of those things in a really meaningless fucking way. It's like when people say ghost. A ghost doesn't mean anything. Like, that's a whole other ramble, but we could talk about, does ghost mean a dead human, or where does that leave animals or living humans, like people experiencing telekinesis, poltergeist activity, et cetera, et cetera. Deities, other incorporeal beings, et cetera. Ghost is a terrible word.
Yes.
I prefer Eidolon.
Yes. Love it. Good.
I'm shipping that really hard.
Okay. I will support you in this.
Like fetch, it's never gonna land. I'm trying.
I think between the two of us, we could make Eidolon a thing.
Make it a thing. They're gonna be like, "You're a fan of Final Fantasy, aren't you?" And I'll say, "Yes, but that's not why we're doing this."
That's unrelated.
Unrelated to this.
Also a fan of Final Fantasy. Again, unrelated.
Oh God. I'm a huge nerd. You'll find this out when you're reading my book, because I go on a long-winded ramble about Dark Souls, the video game, as an allegory for
oh my God,
reincarnation, and why reincarnation is sometimes like a shitty, terrible thing.
Yes.
Yes, apoptosis is a thing that exists. Let's talk about that in nature.
Oh my God, we could, yes.
But so while we're sort of defining these things, it's important to define spaces. On the astral plane, I hate that word. I use celestial. It's very mind and thought oriented. It's very up here somewhere.
Yes.
But there's also the ethereal plane, just the underworld. The dead are. Yes. Liminal spaces. We have the dreaming. We have the collective unconscious. We have the realms of deity, and these things all sort of interact with the material plane in their own sort of way. So I made a map.
I love it.
I will preview that to your viewers.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
It make no sense. This is like, it only makes sense to me probably, but well, let's see. Pull it up. I'll have to trim all my like searching for stuff, or don't. Let's just be real with your wonderful.
Honestly, I kind of love this, that this is just a very real episode. Again, I'm in a sweatshirt, like we're just chilling out, talking about death.
Got my like matchy dark blue over here.
I love it.
All right. We're getting to hear all my hot takes today, but I hate when people try and be so just artificial. I hate it.
I do too. Yes, exactly.
Which I say through my very real Zoom filter.
Okay, but again, there's a difference.
Then we get my glasses. There we
Right,
go.
exactly. But again, when you're, assigned female at birth, and then there are certain expectations that you get raised with at a very early age. And again, your background is different than mine, but woo!
Gasped.
I know. I'm like, forget everything else I was saying. This is the new shiny thing.
So I find visuals help me, and maybe that's my neurodivergence talking, but I need something to find. So here in the center, we have the material plane. That's where we are. The veil is the nice cling film between worlds here.
Perfect.
It's sort of punching those areas in between, but we're touching all these spaces all the time. Celestial plane, very, very connected to the mind. The kingdom of the dead falling below the 0 point field, which if you know much about quantum theory, why would you? I'm a nerd. Is the bottom of everything.
I do, but yeah.
So for your listeners, if you're making a computer model of the universe and you don't put a flat plane at the bottom of it, the computer model will make it for you because it has to exist there. The 0 point field is a point at which there should be zero energy in the universe. But that is not possible. It doesn't exist. So the 0 point field is a place where unused energy in the universe goes, which scientists will happily confusedly tell you largely consists of human consciousness no longer bound to a living body. It is a sea of consciousness. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. What defines energy is its ability to affect the world. Consciousness can affect the world. Therefore, it cannot be destroyed. It must go somewhere. This is where it goes.
I love it.
The universe creates new things, plants, flowers, people are born, etc., etc. Recycles energy from the 0 point field to make new things. So there's your science diagram for reincarnation.
I love it.
The 0 point field is the underworld. Because that is where all the deceased reside. I am not so much concerned with specificity in terms. I am much more concerned with the interest and curiosity between ordered and disordered consciousness, because that affects how energy interacts with the 0 point field on a quantum level. Ordered consciousness, ordered energy from the 0 point field becomes pop quiz, anyone? Dark matter. Dark matter interacts with anything and everything in the universe. It's everywhere all the time, moving through us and around us, unseen, just like the dead. So I would argue all day long that the dead are the fabric of reality, that they hold the universe together.
I love this. I love this.
So if we are here on the material plane, we all know how to astral travel, right? We know what those sort of mental pathways are. Excellent places to get from there are the collective unconscious, which if you like young much, you know all about that. And to realms of deity. And we talk about those kinds of things a lot in occult communities. What we don't talk about are things like the dream space as reality, which you see a lot in Aboriginal culture, etc. Or liminal spaces, haunted spaces, bridges, doorways, etc. Which to me, I consider these holy places. Why would you want to clean them or change them? They're doorways. And these are places through which we can access the kingdom of the dead. These liminal spaces, these pathways, as well as through dream space. Lucid dreaming is a big part of my work. So
love it.
There's my map, which very loosely, tenuously connects to our conversation about deities.
Yes. Oh, I'm losing my mind with joy because I'm also a nerd, right? Again, I'm like reading about four-dimensional space and then trying to connect it with ideas of cryptids and ghosts and all of that. Like what there is a science behind it and kind of understanding our limits in terms of language, but then also again drawing those connections, like you said, between dark matter and the dead, like these things that just permeate everything, the space that we live in. Yes.
The dark matter is the ghost of our reality. Why wouldn't
Yes.
it also be ghosts?
Right. I love it. I love it so much. I'm losing my mind.
Matt Oren joked to me once that I did a very good job not sounding like Deepak Chopra while talking about quantum theory.
That is a high compliment.
I don't-
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I think that you are reclaiming the quantum from the kind of, I don't know how to put this in a way that isn't going to be super dismissive, but I think you know what I'm talking about. The like the love and light, the out there kind of, it's like, no, there's a realness here. A realness. Yes, again, be kind, not nice. Like
we want to talk about quantum stuff that's like tickling my nerd brain.
Yeah.
Just a couple days ago, scientists released some findings that a group of tardigrades in an experiment are quantum entangled.
Yes, right.
I'm not going to bore everyone listening with like explaining that, but it's super cool.
I can link in the description so people can read it if they want to. Yes.
Quantum entanglement is kind of like if Vanessa and I went or we were given a loaf of bread that was exactly the same. And we both went home and did our own thing, but somehow made exactly the same food with it, knowing nothing about the other person. Because they're quantum entangled, they have the same experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When you see wormhole travel in like sci-fi movies, that's quantum entanglement because one side of the black hole is entangled with the other side. Things happen the same on either end.
Mm-hmm.
But these tardigrades were having the same molecular experiences, which is super cool and super fucking weird, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's entanglement is crazy weird.
It is. It's one of those things that kind of breaks your brain, but I love things like that because, again, I think what we're trained to believe is reality is so far from what is actually possible. And I think it's some, again, more cynically, I kind of think that we're being trained not to be aware of, again, how powerful we are and what we're capable of and what the universe is capable of. Because again, I think if more people knew that, we would just laugh at all the social expectations and the rules that we're expected to follow. Because it's like, none of this means anything. This is just make 'em ups. And I can tell it's a make 'em up. And I reject your reality.
Yeah. And like, why?
Yeah, right. Again, when you've had, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm doing that like we're both trying to step out of the way for the other person. I think.
I forgot what I was going to say, which usually happens when I'm like, oh no, you, sorry.
I was pulling something up because I wanted to give you a passage from my newest manuscript because I think you would really enjoy it. We just continue boring people to death.
I don't know how well. Listen, this is because people still need time to process the idea of quantum entangled tardigrades, and so I think this is I think the energy flow has been good for this. That's what I was going to talk about while you call that up. Again, cycling back to this idea that when you have a real experience, something truly real, and something that is outside of, again, what you're kind of programmed to believe is real, but you experience it and oh, this is more real than anything I've experienced before. Again, you kind of come back to the mundane world and you're just like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. No, like you can't be bound by those laws anymore and those rules, the mores. You're just like, no, I'm not. No, I'm done. No, that's cute. I'm only going to do it again. You're limited by like certain legal choices. Sure. But again, I decided, I'm like, no, I'm weird. I'm just going to be weird the rest of my life. However that works. I can't do it otherwise. It's who I am. So I just accept this.
So if you want, I'll read you this passage.
Please.
Okay. Authors of books such as these have set before them what at times seems an impossible task. Do we rely solely on past works and myths, though they may be limited, or apply our own experiences, a new perspective? While these new perspectives may be useful, profound, or relevant, they are vulnerable, and perhaps that's the gift. Not in the practice or the scholarship, but in the sharing of a truth that is wounding. And here's mine. I died. What I experienced between living, dying, and returning to this life, a life that I now feel was given to me by the very gods I serve, forever changed how I interact with the world of the living. Anyone who read my first book, Do I Have to Wear Black, knows that I've long had a love affair with the zero-point field theorized in quantum theory, an electromagnetic field that exists as the background to all things, a disordered ocean of energy, acting as a foundation upon which the universe is built. It is something I've long held as what I believe the underworld is and where it might be found. It is in my first book that I write. When it comes to an afterlife, the underworld, as it were, or the many halls of deities that we hear tell of in so many legends, myths, and cultures, to me that is string theory, 1,000 worlds we can feel but cannot touch. Past lives, memories of other places and times, a well of creation from which all things might derive. It's harder to explain, but I'll try. For those of you who are not familiar with the Akashic record, it's an idea espoused by some that there is a non-physical plane of existence upon which all of human experience has been recorded. All our thoughts, feelings, words, actions, and so on marked there for all of eternity. I'm not quite certain I believe that, but I'm also not quite certain that it's entirely wrong. Nobel Peace Prize winner, philosopher, integral theorist, and if it means anything to you, classical pianist, Dr. Ervin Laszlo, preferred to conflate the idea of the Akashic record with that of the zero-point field theorized in quantum physics, a known force that remains unproved outside of theory. Essentially, there is, at the bottom of all things that we know of as reality, a flat plane from which all things come and to which all things must return. Dr. Laszlo referred to this hive of energy as, quote, the original source of all things, unquote. The birthplace of all things, the great cosmic mirror of existence, a churning cauldron of eternity, the womb of time, a sea of energy giving birth to the very stars. It is Kepler of the Department of Consciousness Research who takes it a step further in the role of the brain in conscious processes, a new way of looking at the neural correlates of consciousness. Wordy. When they state that the zero-point field has the dual task of carrying not only energy, but consciousness, noting that, quote, every zero-point field information state is associated with a conscious state, unquote, suggesting that the zero-point field is, quote, an information preserving medium, quote. If the information we're talking about is human consciousness, no longer bound to a living body. This disordered ocean of energy, they call it, repeatedly referring to this unknowable place as a sea, the depth of which we could not comprehend, at last concluding that all conceivable shades of awareness are woven into the fabric of the zero-point field, rendering it not simply a sea of energy, but a formless sea of consciousness. And so it is, there at the bottom of the universe, within this churning cauldron of energy and dark matter, that the dead reside, in which thoughts become reality. It is there that we begin to understand how the mind might manifest change in the physical world. And there that we see the dead themselves are the very threads holding together the fabric of the universe. For that zero-point field is, as is theorized, a sea of dark matter, and that sea is made up of consciousness. Then the very dark matter holding together the universe must then be our dead, all those minds no longer confined to the physical realm by their corporeal form. It goes without saying that I'm a bit of a nerd, and that often colors my magical experience. I use the Dark Souls video game franchise as a metaphor for reincarnation, use tabletop role-playing games as a teaching tool, polyhedral dice for divination, and within these very pages you'll find references to Pharasma, a fictional deity of death in Paizo's Pathfinder role-playing game. But here, as we delve deeper into the realms of the dead, I'd like to take you on a journey through the world of a comic book called The Amory Wars. The plot surrounds a fictional conflict taking place in Heaven's Fence, a group of worlds tied together by an energy called the Keywork. I could probably fill a book writing about the mythos of that world, but today I simply want to talk about the Keywork itself, because it's an elegant analogy for the magical realms and their interconnectedness. While heaven's fence within the fictional universe of the Amory Wars is made up of many worlds and many stars, it is the keywork that holds them together. A beam of light made up of souls of deceased individuals who once occupied a physical form on one of those many worlds. Within this mythos, there are those who become enlightened, let go of their emotional connections to their lives lived, and move on to a utopia of a kind. But for others, they remain the fuel that holds together the fabric of reality. They are consciousness. They are thought given form. And for us, here, now, whether you call it spiritual, magical, scientific, or theoretical, there is one inarguable constant. We all are a part of the fabric that is reality. And so it is there in the universe's all-pervading, all-knowing, electromagnetic background with its unique power and spectral density, we, a collection of thermodynamic miracles, become one among the fence.
I love this so much. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and all of us.
You're welcome. I end that chapter by saying that perhaps the dead, these other realms, magical experiences are all just science we don't have words for, which presents far more interesting questions than are ghosts real? What are these places in the depths to us, the living? A sea of darkness dotted with infinite lights, a vastness between and worlds surrounding each, unknown to us until we reach them. Here on this material plane, we are blinded to the fullness of the underworld and remain so for so long as a beating heart resides in our chest. The dark depths, the realms of the dead, where we move between people and places like flitting dreams, a place in which it is we who are the ghosts.
God. I love it so much. I love it so much.
Dorky science stuff.
But okay, but I'm into this. I'm into all of this. Like I don't know if you're familiar with David Bohm at all. Yeah, so that idea of the unfolded universe and all of us just unfoldings of this unfolded universe. Like I think that you're tapping into something that like a lot of other scientists have kind of tapped into, that like we're trying to find language for this reality and what it is, and that there is this kind of reality but beyond, outside of our perception, and figuring out the language for it to kind of engage with it.
It's like, I'm gonna go full like History Channel aliens guy for a second, but like
Totally.
pick any paper you'd like any article, anything that talks about dark matter, and every time they use the word dark matter, pretend the word is ghost instead, and read that. And just sort of think about how those kinds of materials are interacting with the universe and how we think about them, what their purpose is, what a mystery to us dark matter really is, what its purpose is, whether it's helpful or destructive. Yes, on both counts.
Yes.
And how pervasive it is in our lives. It's just sort of constantly, you're not aware of it, but right now dark matter is moving through your body.
Yes.
And I find all of that very fascinating. Absolutely.
Well, and I think too that to me that like helpful and destructive, the Morrigan and Kali, right? Like, and again that association with darkness, like Kali is blackness, time. The time devours all, right? This idea that there is this, I don't know, the power in the darkness, and it is helpful and is sometimes destructive, which, as you mentioned earlier, is also sometimes very helpful. Some things need to be destroyed.
I love the comic book I mentioned, the Amory Wars.
Yeah.
Because you have this series of planets that are held together by this beam of light. Heaven's fence, and they use the phrase often, one among the fence, because when you die, you become part of this fence. And I think of it often when I'm talking to a grieving person or interacting with death work, because it's just this idea that they're not lost to us, that they've gone on to such an important task of holding the world together.
Yes.
Being part of reality in a way we can't possibly understand. But this sort of this idea that the dead can sort of coalesce into an ideal form, sort of exist within that world. I had to pull all my thoughts together at once. It was too many, sorry.
No, you're good.
But you have all these sort of disordered consciousnesses, right? Like miscellaneous souls, newly dead and disorganized within the fence. But as they sort of evolve and move on from their emotional attachments to life and what their life was, and sort of become a distillation of their core components, their core being.
Yes.
You see in the comic book these entities sort of taking form as something either greatly destructive or greatly helpful, because you have these beings who might be an amalgamation of a lot of healers, and they're this one entity, or this being that's made up of the souls of murderers, and it's deeply destructive, but they're almost like deities in the way that they interact. And I love that idea of spirits interacting with each other in that way, where they become grayer and softer over time, where they become this sort of distilled idea of what their base motivation was. And that's very reductive, and I'm not saying that is what I believe or is reality at all, but I do love this idea of that sort of, much like the Morrigan, this tripartite deity that we think of as one person, but it is not. The idea of many spirits interacting together as one entity, I think, is very interesting to think about.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And to me, that's also how matter works too, right? You have these components of matter that get recycled as things die and decay. And, again, even just us, like we're constantly, our molecules are being replaced, right? Like our atoms are being replaced. So again, things are more fluid than I think people want to realize, even about the existence of deities, right? That there is this changing and shifting. To me, that's also more exciting and more interesting than assuming it's these static things that existed for all time.
And this is like a way out there thought. We're down the rabbit hole now, though, right?
Yeah, right. I'm into it.
We have chased the rabbit. Are deities the dead? We could make some arguments. But let's look at a figure like Hearn, for example, is definitely a ghost. Ghost, Iowa. Myth clearly states that this is a human person that was killed while hunting on the king's land, and they went on to become a deity and protector. These sort of deified individuals, we see that across a lot of cultures.
Yes.
But what if that's more of a reality than we really give it credit for? Where we look at something like, picking something at random, let's say like the mother creator sort of lady Wicca deity type. I'm trying to find words. What's wrong with me? What if we have this sort of amalgam of nurturing, maternal, creating figures that comprise that deity? I mean, I do think that's a very interesting thought.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just thinking too of like Inanna, right? Because I love looking at, okay, what are the oldest stories that we have, right, that have survived? And so if you have, it could be, again, this amalgam of multiple warrior women, who just kind of were doing their own thing. And then that became like, all of that kind of became a myth, even the mythological, like first pharaohs of Egypt, they don't necessarily think those were necessarily individual people, but just, okay, these set of rulers kind of followed this same path, so we're just going to put them together and give them one name, and they ruled for 300 years or something like that. Like there's myth making even in recorded history. So right.
I mean, I talk about this in my first book, but when I'm telling that story about when I died, I talk about how I'm sitting there in that moment telling a story about dying and descending into the underworld. It's a story of catabasis. It's a story of descent. I'm talking about interacting with a deity, something I learned, a bit of information given me. I was sent back to the realm of the living. It mimics myth in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And I ask the reader to consider how many times through how many years would a person have to tell that story about me as a human before my humanity is lost.
Yes. Yes.
as I lead into talking about other myths of descent, I
Mhm.
ask people to consider that maybe they were human.
Right.
Maybe there's stories about actual human beings that just became larger with the telling.
That's it. Yes.
But then I also go on to tell like Batman and Frankenstein as myths of descent. So like live with that.
But again, we might just need some time from that, and then Batman becomes a deity. Like
If you read Grant Morrison's Super Gods, there was already an argument for heroes as deities. I mean, we're definitely making that kind of argument.
yes.
And really, I'm a hard polytheist for anyone listening, and I'm definitely, I don't know, I'm throwing conjecture all over the place, but thinking about the deities as sort of these amalgams of deified deceased individuals or collections of individuals. And then sort of thinking about things like, oh gosh, that sort of idea of egregore and thought form and the power we put into a figure, or like to what extent are we creating sort of American Gods rules here?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Where we're putting power into figures like Santa Claus because we've believed in them for so long, and it becomes very real after a point.
Absolutely, yes.
I made this argument recently on a video cast that Santa Claus is a figure that people throughout the world can agree on what they look like, what their purviews are, how they act, what their rituals are. Like, this is a deity.
Yes, yes.
Children worship Santa Claus, and you can fight me about that. I believe that's true. It's
so,
not,
yeah.
I'm not just being sort of metaphorical. I think that's a reality.
Absolutely.
We're
Yes.
writing letters, we're making petitions to Santa Claus for favor. We're leaving libations and offerings.
Oh my God. Yes.
We build an altar every year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice shiny tree, and we put offerings under it.
Put offerings under it. Exactly. Yes.
Santa
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, you're checking all the boxes here. Yes.
And that's something everyone in the world can agree on. We can't even all agree on Jesus or Inanna, but we can agree on Santa.
It's true.
So we're doing better as a culture. This figure. We're also willing to look at Santa Claus as a moving myth. We can add to Santa Claus's myth. We interact with it in a living, breathing way. Yes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, theys and thems, ladies and gentledems, I think is how we should interact with all of our deities in a living, meaningful way where we're constantly breathing life into their myth. And that's powerful. It really is.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my God, I love it.
I'm rambling on.
I love it. So I literally feel like I could talk to you all day, not just about deities, but also quantum theory, which is like getting my brain all tingly. But I also want to
more. We have to do this more. We'll do it
okay, again. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Hooray. Good. Yes. Either on the podcast or personally, like you slide in my DMs anytime.
In person when we're not all dying. Everyone listening, please go get your booster shots, get your vaccine. If you don't have them, stay home, wear a mask. I don't want to bury you later. Oh my God.
Okay, the moving words from somebody who's actually a death care worker. Like, this is a real thing.
You're tired death care worker. Zoom is getting rid of the rings, but they're there. It's like a raccoon. It's not attractive.
Exactly. Don't do that to Mortellus. If you can't, like, if everything else is too abstract, at least think about that. And you.
Don't forget that nobody out there is nice or kind to death care workers. They reserve their niceness and kindness for doctors and nurses, and not even then. So if you want to do a kindness or a nicety, show up with a box of donuts at your funeral home, your morgue, and know that they will appreciate it.
I love this. See, look, life advice, quantum theory, life advice. This is all incredible.
The death care industry is, well, it's a little messy, and
yes. Yep. I have stories about that too. Yeah.
I do.
I know, I can imagine.
One of my experiences as a student of mortuary sciences is where the name for this book came from. My image isn't mirrored, so I have no idea where I'm pointing.
Yeah, that doesn't help you, but yeah.
It doesn't at all. What do you do there? I walked in on a group of people having a conversation about having attended a Wiccan funeral, and they didn't know me and they didn't know I was a witch, and they just knew fuck all about me. I was a stranger.
Of course.
So I'm in the corner with I've got my notepad out.
Yes.
Like Jane Goodall. I'm watching over here.
I love it.
I remember this person saying that they were totally creeped out by this funeral. And oh my God, like why? What happened? I'm being a jerk.
I like it.
Oh, you should have seen this high priestess in their black robes and I'm thinking to myself, this person's probably just wearing whatever black dress they have in their house. We both know that's reality. Right.
Exactly.
It's a funeral. Everyone wears black.
Yes.
And then one of them said something that I cannot possibly have anticipated coming out of their mouth. If I go to a Wiccan funeral, do I have to wear black? And I would like you to understand that both of the people uttering this were wearing black funeral suits at the time they said it. And I thought to myself, you'd wear black to any funeral you went to ever.
That's it.
Why is it scary when it's a Wiccan funeral? Why is it satanic when it's a pagan?
Exactly.
Why do we have to grieve brightly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought if that was the kind of question people have, then I would answer them.
That's great.
Do I have to wear black? Up to you.
Yeah, right? I love it.
They also, somewhere toward the end of that conversation, wondered if just anything should be allowed at funerals. Like, would you let a horse in? And I don't know what that had to do with anything, but I'm still laughing about it. Like, would you let a horse come to the funeral? I'm not sure why that's equivalent to pagans wearing black. But
not exactly. I know.
Like, is the horse well behaved? Did the person who died love horses?
I was about to say, does the horse have a relationship with the deceased? Because if so, of course the horse comes to the funeral.
The horse can come. No, it's funny that sort of the perception people have. And by the end of that conversation, I told them who I was and what I am, and we talked about this, and they both admitted that they were being prejudiced and that they didn't understand.
Amazing.
And,
yes.
And that's what we have to do every day. We can't just get mad and walk away and tell a funny story. We have to have the hard conversations.
That's exactly it.
We have to stop and educate, because if we can't do that kindly.
Kindly, yes.
Can't do it kindly, and we can't do it in the moment, and we can't have these difficult exchanges, then we never make any change. We can't make anything better.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
I might not be liked, but I do my best to be kind.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're doing good work in the world, personally and professionally.
Thank you again so much for listening and or watching, depending on where you are consuming this particular podcast. I'm going to put a link in the description for Mortellus's link tree. I would encourage you to buy their book, buy their candles. They smell incredible. And just otherwise support them in their endeavors. I really absolutely adore Mortellus. And also, if you want to keep in touch with Personal Pans, you can follow us on Twitter or on Instagram at Personal Pans. I am perpetually on Twitter at Kali Butterfly. That's Kali Butterfly. And I think that's it. Thank you again, and I hope you have a playful and curious day.